Hello and welcome to
Hello.
Hopeful Conversations. I am
Thank
Vicki
you.
Montague, and today I am joined by JP Morgan. Now, JP is someone that I have admired, I guess, from afar. For I came across you about a year ago, I think, and have been
Mm,
secretly stalking you.
cool.
um, and I think what I absolutely love and why I wanted you to come on this podcast is your um well, in a nutshell, on your website, I think it says it all.
Mm,
Achieve the life you were meant to live by harnessing the power of self-creation. It's not
mm,
just about what you're doing, but who you're being.
mm,
And there's something so powerful in that.
mm,
And on top of that, it must have been about a month ago, I think you sent an email out and you kind of almost brushed over it. But in that email, you mentioned about having had a diagnosis of MS.
mhm, mhm,
And there was a had in there, and I couldn't get it out
mm,
of my head. It's
mm,
like, "Oh my gosh, like, what?" And it just
mm,
kept coming back, and in the end, I was like, "I've got to get this guy onto the podcast. I need to hear
mm,
this story, and I need to hear
mm,
what more about this self-creation thing." So,
mm.
yeah, JP,
Yeah.
thank you for coming,
Mm,
and I'd be so delighted if you could, yeah, share some of
yeah.
that journey that you've been on.
Yeah, I'd love to. I think it's interesting to reflect on it because it's been a while now. And I don't talk about it that often because it's kind of like for me personally, it's in the past. And I say me personally because my mom's also part of this story and it's not as in the past for her by any means, um but I also think the reason it will be great to talk about is because thanks for pulling that quote from my website because it really is a big part of the healing or the absence of multiple sclerosis in my body in my life is really a great example of self-creation.
Right.
I hadn't really thought too often about the connection between my work and that, but of course my work emerges from my way of being with myself. So
Yeah.
um, probably would make sense to start at the beginning.
Mm.
I think a year or so after I graduated college, I was like 23, maybe 23, 24. I don't remember exactly. Um, I started like getting blurriness in my left eye. I was like, oh, it's kind of weird, just like kind of blinking. What's going on? Something in my eye. And then like day by day, it was getting a little bit worse. And then one morning I woke up and I just couldn't even see my alarm clock. And I was like, wait, this isn't blurry. This is like blindness. This is like, it was just gray. It was just like, it wasn't like I couldn't see. It wasn't like fuzzy. It just was nothing there in the center of my eye. And it was just getting bigger and bigger. And so I remember going to the, optometrist just to get my eyes tested. And they were like asking me to read the board. And I remember like raising my voice because they kept asking me if I could see the letters. And I said, I can't see the fucking chart. Like, I
Wow.
can't see, and it was my own fear and frustration with fucking like just going blind in my eye, like over the period of days. I didn't know anything about optic neuritis, which is what it was at that point. And so, I just, people are blind forever. I just assumed I would be blind forever in this eye. And so like the fear of losing vision, I mean, thank God it was just in one eye. It was just existentially really scary, and mysterious because the optometrist didn't know what the hell was going on. They almost didn't believe me. And so I went to see an ophthalmologist and I actually made an image using like Photoshop to give the ophthalmologist an ability to see what I could see. And so I
Mm.
like made a picture of like two circles, and one of them was just like mostly gray in the middle, and the other one was like a clear image. And he's like, "Oh, you made this?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Can I keep this?" I was like, "Yeah." Um, and he's like, "Okay, something's going on here, but we need to send you to a neurologist because it's deeper than your eye. It's not your eyeball, essentially. It's something else. It's something between your eyeball and your brain is going on. So we need to get an MRI and go to a neurologist." So then I went to a neurologist and they sent me for an MRI, which that was my first experience of many to follow
Oh,
MRIs. I don't know if you've ever been in an MRI machine, have you?
my daughter has, so I've
Okay.
been on the
She's
outside of
told you
it.
about it. Yeah. Well, it's not comfy. I mean,
No.
they make it as comfortable physically as you can, but you're inside this thing and it's like this
Yeah.
horrible sound. And so, you know, having gone blind in my eye, and ophthalmologist not knowing what it is. Now I'm inside of a machine. It was, scary. And then we went to see the the neurologist, and they told me that I have optic neuritis, which is caused through an inflammation of the retinal nerve. And maybe there's other things that cause it too, but that's what was causing mine. And the reason the retinal nerve was inflamed is because it was being attacked by my immune system. My white blood cells were attacking the myelin coating around the nerve that connects my eye to my brain, and basically making the signal not travel very well. So I wasn't getting the image. But the good news is we can give you an intravenous steroid treatment and it will heal it for the most part. But the bad news is that we've also found 6 lesions on your brain. So these spots of damage where this has been happening and going on for a while. And so, and then she said, so that means you have multiple sclerosis. And it was so matter of fact, the worst bedside manner ever. It was no getting me ready. Yep. No clue what that was. Just came out. I thought I was just going to find out what's going on with my eye. And it's you actually have a chronic condition. And then the last thing you want to do is go home and Google that, which of course I did. When a doctor doesn't give you much information, then you're left with the vacuum of a diagnosis and you go home and start Googling. It's and I remember getting in the car from that appointment, telling my mom and dad, no, I'm cool. Cause my mom and dad both came in their own cars, 3 cars, horrible carpooling, but whatever. We were in different places. We all came to the doctor's appointment. They were there with me. We found out. I'm oh, okay. Playing it tough. I'm all right. It's cool. We'll figure it out. And then they get in their cars and they leave. And I just start fucking crying. I was just scared, 24 years old. One of the first things that came to my mind is I was in the Air Force ROTC during college, and I was going to be a fighter pilot. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And I actually, just through course of events, political stuff, the war in Albania was happening at the time, I decided not to not to continue. And I opted out. But if I had continued, that would have been the point where I would have gotten my wings and would have become a pilot. And then if that happened, I would have been grounded. I would have had 10 years sitting at a desk in the Air Force. I was holy shit. It's crazy how things work out. So, I'm 24, I'm scared, I don't know what it is. I start researching and listening to the doctor, and they're we could put you on, some interferon, some therapy, or we could wait to see if you have any more symptoms. And if you have another, oh, by the way, I got the IV, and within a week, my eye had come back 95%. So I have almost good vision in my eye. Well, now I'm in my 40s and they're starting to get blurry, but that's another thing. But the blindness mostly went away. I have a little bit of color blindness in that eye, but mostly went away. Wow. And so I said, okay, well, let's see if we have another symptom. If I have another symptom. And she said, well, you also participate in the study. So I opted in to do a study at I forget the name of the university, one of the top universities in Boston. So every 3 months I would go up and get an MRI. And the reason I said yes to it, because I'm also well, I'm going to get an MRI every 3 months, though I'll kind of know, what if there's anything changing in the lesions in my brain and stuff. And so I just went at that point in my life. It was Coca-Cola, Taco Bell, McDonald's, hang out with my friends, play music, repeat cycle. It wasn't I didn't really have any, my mom cooked for me growing up. We ate good at home, but as soon as I was, old enough, I was a typical American, young kid eating the American diet, standard American diet, which the acronym is SAD. I don't know if you ever knew that, but it's pretty funny.
That's clever.
It's sad. It's actually sad. It's sad. It's sad that it's sad. And so along with that standard American diet was just whatever the doctor says is gospel. And so it's I have to just wait and see. And if it's, the best thing I can do is take this medicine, which will have side effects. And that's the story. Man, it's been so long since I lived and saw the world that way, but that's how I saw it at that point. So I was just kind of waiting. Wasn't trying to do research on how to heal. That wasn't even in my mind. What the doctor said goes. Yeah. And so I was waiting, and some years went by, and there were no new symptoms. And I was in the study, and every 3 months I was getting an MRI, and nothing was changing. And I was kind of fuck it. This thing's kind of, it's one and done. Maybe I'm good. I knew enough to know that some, relapsing, remitting MS, you can go years with nothing and then it comes back. and then you have another one, and then it escalates over the years. But nothing happened. And every time I saw the doctor, though, she was still like, I still think you should go on it, you know, the medication. I was like, I remember you saying it's 50-50, and if there's another symptom, I haven't had one. So oh, and the thing is too, that I had like a really bad cold and sore throat when I got the optic neuritis. And she said that, or the ophthalmologist said, sometimes a virus can attack the optic nerve. And I remember saying that to the neurologist. She said, yeah, but you also have lesions on your brain, so it's probably not that. But I was always kind of like, well, maybe had something to do with it. So anyway, I was about to leave home and start traveling. And so I had to opt out of the study. And she was trying to like get me to like take this med and take it with me and do it in my travels. I was like, I'm gonna roll the dice here. If I have another symptom, I'll go on the meds, but if not, not. And so I went traveling, no more MRIs. And I haven't had an MRI of my brain since, so I don't know what's changed. But what I'll say is that like I lived with this ambient fear that I would have another symptom. And I knew that, and I specifically was afraid that if I got a really bad sore throat, that something would happen.
Right.
And it wasn't until like, I don't know, 2009, or maybe it was 2006, maybe 2006 or 2009. I can't remember the year, because both those years I was in London, that I went to an event. I had a hobby interest in performance magic, and I went to an event in Blackpool for magicians, kind of closed door magicians event. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But all the magicians stay up all night and just like do card tricks and trade secrets, and it's like super fun. And I went to this event. Everybody's like, you know, you're not going to get any sleep. It's going to be awesome. And then I was like, awesome. And then in the back of my head, I was like, oh shit, I'm going to get sick. And if I get sick, this thing could come back. And that I'm going to get sick. I'm going to get sick. I'm going to get sick. In hindsight, I know, I can see now that was a mantra. I got sick. I got a sore throat, and I got a different form of optic neuritis, which was, instead of blindness, I got double vision. So the optic nerve that controlled the muscle that controlled my eye got triggered, got inflamed, and I suddenly was seeing double, like pretty bad double vision everywhere. And I was so scared that this was like MS coming back that I never told anybody. And it came back, and then after like a few weeks, my sore throat went away, the vision came back again, about 95%. I have a slight double vision. Like if I go to the theater, like I'm sitting in the back, there's like 2 people on stage. I always tell my wife when I'm driving, it's like, don't worry, there's just more cars, so it's even safer. I'm even more careful. There's like twice as many cars. So that happened. And so, you know, if I had followed the advice of the doctor, it would have been like, okay, go and, you know, get the meds now. But I don't remember exactly when, but I saw the TEDx. If anybody that listening to this knows about MS, they've probably seen the TEDx talk by, oh my God, her name's escaped me right now. The doctor that had MS, that healed it through diet, Terry Walls. Do you not know of Terry Walls?
No, I don't know.
Oh my God, her TEDx talk is millions and millions of views. Minding your mitochondria. She was literally bedridden with multiple sclerosis and pretty much healed herself almost completely, if not completely, to the point where she's out doing cycling and physical activity all through diet. She had the first and maybe still only study that was approved as a clinical trial by the Multiple Sclerosis Society. You know, she's a medical doctor, research doctor, and she has done a number of clinical trials now with diet showing healing in MS. Wow. Really phenomenal. Yeah. And I'm not surprised you haven't heard about it, because even though it's incredibly amazing and there's clinical trials, there's obviously a lot of money and interest behind people not knowing about that.
Yep, of course.
But her book, you know, which followed. Okay. So let me tie this in. About a year after my diagnosis, my mom was talking to her doctor about the pain that she was having in her wrists. And she just had mentioned offhand that, her son had an MS diagnosis. The doctor said, well, maybe we should get you checked out, because you also had that thing with your bladder. She's like, for MS? How's that? You know, my son went blind. What are you talking about? My arms hurt and I'm having bladder issues. And so she went to see a neurologist and got an MRI, and she had like way more full-blown MS than I did. And they never, for years she'd been dealing with symptoms, but not realizing, because the crazy thing about MS, it attacks your nervous system. And so there's so many different symptoms. You can have cognitive issues, you can have bladder control issues, you could have pain in your arms or leg. I mean, it's like everything, your nervous system.
Right.
And so that was a bummer, but also a blessing, because it's like, oh my gosh, all these things are connected. And so somewhere in that period of like before or just after that second optic neuritis issue, the eye issue, and my mom's diagnosis, we came across the Terry Walls. I probably was just searching for information. And so instead of going back to the doctor and asking for the drugs, I started to dive in at that point. It's like, what if there's another way? And I just went down the rabbit hole, and that took me, into the whole possibility that we can heal our bodies through the way that we treat them, and I've had a number of experiences since then. Like a small but powerful one was going to the NHS doctor when I had allergies for the first time in my life whilst living in London. This is like, I'm 28, 29 now, and suddenly I have allergies. What's that about? And now I know some people, you get them at different stages in your life, but like, the doctor was like, well, you live in London and maybe the pollens here are different than where you're from. And the diesel fumes in the air carry the pollens into your system. So it can, you can create an allergic reaction more in the city sometimes. Like, okay. It's like, so what can you do? It's like, well, you live with it, or you take these meds. That was it. Same story.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, okay. And started taking these meds, and it kind of helped dry out my sinuses, but it made me feel weird. And I was like, I don't really like the way that I feel in medication. Even though the symptoms cleared up, there's like this other kind of like non-specific, just cloudiness or not normalness that like, to me, wasn't worth it. I'd rather have just a more straightforward, like, leaky nose or something than just like this overarching, just like blah, or attitude change. Like even with the steroid treatment, I was kind of an asshole for a week to heal my eye. And it's like, these trade-offs are sucky. You just know in your soul that you shouldn't have to feel shitty to feel better.
Yeah.
Something's right about that. And so through this diving into this health stuff and, these different diets, I went deep into, well, first like to kind of plant-based and like juicing, and then into like the paleo diet. And for me, the paleo diet really started to impact me. The first thing that I noticed is that I didn't have allergies anymore. And that's when so I started like, what's this about? And it's like, oh, when I don't eat refined sugars and grains, my body is not so inflamed. And when the pollens go into my body, I'm not allergic. So it's not like I cured my allergy. I just created an environment in which allergens don't bother me.
Yeah.
And that same kind of, and so with Terry Walls and this idea of diet, like my mom and I just started eating super healthy, and my mom's symptoms started to improve. And my mom was at a point where she was like falling down, like having trouble even walking, like, and then, within, I don't know, a year or two, she was like running 5 miles, like in her 50s through this diet. And so I just have taken this on as a lifestyle since my 20s. I'm 44 now. And in my late 30s, when I was talking to my MD, I was like trying to get life insurance, and they found some old record of this MS diagnosis. And I was like telling him about it. And he was like, you haven't had a symptom in 10, 15 years. Like, I would consider you to not have that anymore. Maybe you were misdiagnosed and you never had it, or maybe you've just, healed from it. I was like, sweet, cool. And so I don't know what the truth is, right? But here's something that I do know is that like these autoimmune conditions, they're not binary, right? There's not like a switch where it's like, now you have it, now you don't. Even a virus, right? Like viruses live inside of us. And then it's like the viral load and the amount of the virus is a factor in how much symptom we're expressing. And when we overcome it, it's like the virus is still in us, but it's suppressed to a level that it can live in us with a homeostasis. And so like all of this idea that I either have it or I don't have it is like, that's an illusion anyway. And so to try to find out, like, was the diagnosis true or not? Look, I definitely had the genetic predisposition from multiple sclerosis, because both me and my mom, and by the way, my mom's brother now as well has MS, like it's in the family. And so my body can be active with that or cannot to a different degrees. And what is for sure, that's for sure. So the other thing that's for sure is that it hasn't been active in my life since I've been eating very, very healthy and taking care of myself and sleeping well. And what's also sure is that as my mom has done these things, it's reduced in symptoms in her as well. And so, you know, I'm so grateful for the experience that my mom and I have had. I don't know if I would say that I'm grateful that we've, you know, had the conditions that we've had, but certainly the experience that's come from it, of waking up to thinking differently about health. And that has helped us so much. Like, just because I had that experience when my nephew was born with one kidney, and the other kidney in place of it was a massive tumor. And they said they have to do immediate surgery, take the tumor out. And he's like 2 days old. And the doctors were like, it's, you know, it's inpatient. It's really in depth. It's a week. He'll have to be in the hospital for a week, like in the NICU after the surgery. It's risky. You know, he's just been born. We're going to take this huge tumor out. I was like, just go to other hospital in Boston and get another opinion, because every doctor is going to give you the opinion of what they see that they can do.
Right.
And so my sister just took him from the hospital that he was born into another hospital in Boston. They're like, oh yeah, very simple procedure, keyhole surgery, outpatient. We'll have him in and out in the day. No big deal.
Wow.
So it's like, why do the other hospital not say that? Because they don't have the resources. They don't have the experience. They don't have the equipment. And if they tell you that the hospital 45 minutes north in Boston does, they're going to lose out on a $50,000 surgery.
Wow.
That the health insurance companies are paid for, right? Like, we pay a part of it. And it's like, it's fucking everywhere. I had a friend that was an NHS doctor, was a surgeon, told me about, I went to see him about my knees. He's like, look, man,
Oh yeah.
you need surgery. And I ran it by my friend, my colleague. He's also a surgeon. He agrees. You need surgery. You want these knees to not be painful. You need surgery. He said, and you're my friend. So I'm going to also tell you that we're surgeons and we're going to tell you need surgery. I recommend you go see a physical therapist, or you say physiotherapist in the UK, because they're probably going to tell you need physiotherapy, not surgery. I was like, thanks. And so I went to see them, and that's what they told me, and they helped. And I didn't get surgery, you know? And so it's everywhere. And like, well, the lesson that I've learned in all this is we need to be the founder and the operator and the CEO of our health. We can have people that we consult with, but at the end of the day, we have to take that in our own hands, because, you know, the system is not set up in a way to look out for our well-being.
Yep.
It just isn't. So, wow, I just talked for like 20 minutes straight. So thank you for that invitation, but I'm curious what questions you might have, you want to hear more about, or anything like that.
There's so much in what you've shared, so much in that. I love what you said there about being the author of our health, because that's something that's become really clear and apparent to me as well. And the ability to question, to not just accept, you know, a doctor tells you something, and because they've got a white coat on, it means that's it, that's the only way. I love, you know, your sharing of that experience to show that there are other options, that there are other avenues to go down, I guess. And I think, you know, if someone were listening to this who has been diagnosed with MS, there's so much hope in what you've shared. And I'm kind of, I know that there'll be questions from people around, well, what diet, what does he eat exactly? Like, how does he, you know, and I'm curious to know that, but I also want to sort of preface it before I ask the question, because what I've seen, and I'm sure you too, is that every body is completely individual. And when we listen to the body and sense what's right for it, that's the right thing. There is no fixed diet, right, that's right. for everybody.
For everybody,
So given that, what I mean, I heard you say, you know, avoiding refined sugars and carbs, and kind of following the paleo diet, which I've done too, and had incredible, you know, benefits from. Is that the sort of basis to what you do now, or is there something else?
It is the basis. You know, the simple idea is, the more naturally occurring the foods are that we're eating, the more history the human body has with digesting that, right? I read a good book. This isn't necessarily about healing an immune condition, not about MS, but maybe it's an autoimmune condition, but it was by a MIT master at MIT, like, or a doctor at MIT, who got this really rare condition where he became hypersensitive to all chemicals. So like if you turn the tap on, just a little bit of chlorine or chloramine in the water, the off-gassing of that would make him start coughing sick. Because we all have all that stuff goes into us, but we have a certain ability to manage a toxic load, right? Like, but he became so unable to manage toxic loads that, like, you spray house cleaner and he would just get a rash, like across the room, that kind of thing. And so, but the way to heal himself, he had to create an environment that was so toxic free that his body could start to build up its strength again to manage a toxic load that was kind of more normal. And so anyway, it was about cellular health. And he said, the simplest thing, a healthy body has healthy cells. And one of the things that he pointed out, that all cells have toxins coming in and nutrients coming in at all times. Every food has both nutrition and toxin in it. And what defines that is nutrition helps to build a cell up and toxin breaks things down. So every food has both, to different amounts. And so the higher the nutrient load and the lower the toxic load, the better it's going to be for your cell. And the other key is movement, because if the cell moves, then it kind of things jog around and this toxins can move out and this nutrition can move in. So it's like real simple physics, biophysics, I guess you would say. So I like that simplicity. And my background is physics and mathematics at university. So that spoke to me. And so I've understood conceptually that lowering the toxic load on my body and increasing the nutrient load was the ideal. And so the shortest path to that is eating natural foods, right? Because as you take foods and you make, you change them and you add things in, and you increase their complexity, you have more toxicity and you lower the nutrition in it, right? And so it's just a shorthand, easiest way. Like, how old is this food? Has it been around? Can you go and pick this somewhere, or is it walking around? And can you, and so, yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, and within that, there's a lot of nuance. Like, Terry Walls gets into like specific foods within, she ascribes to that too, like natural foods, but within that, more of all these different color vegetables are going to help your mitochondria build strength. And so if a person's in the process of healing something, I think you do want to dive in deeper. But at this stage in my life now, it's like, I think having so many years of being super strict in that, I've done a certain degree of healing of the gut lining. And now sometimes I eat bread. And actually, I was just saying, I ate way too much bread this week, and I've got like a stuffy nose and I can feel a bit bloated. And this is going back to your point, right? Like, so the thing that I've gotten more than anything from starting to eat really healthy and be conscious about my eating is I've developed a capacity to feel in my body what foods do to me. Like, and it takes presence and paying attention, because it's not always immediate. Right. It's hard to know. It takes more presence to know that something that I ate 2 days ago is doing this on my skin today. Right. We're used to looking for acute reactions. Like, I'm sick in my stomach because I just had sushi 4 hours ago. Like, we'll look that far back, but we don't usually think to look 2, 3, 4 days ago to what's happening in our body now. And so it's that presence and that paying attention that teaches you that. And, and that I agree with you, like within, once you're eating natural foods, within that, like paying attention to how they treat your body is important, because even within natural foods, a lot of them weren't necessarily eaten by people up until very recently. Right. Or if they were eaten differently. Because like, for example, my mom and I read about like tomatoes, they're a nightshade, and some people don't do very well with nightshades, a type of vegetable, as others. But then more specifically, I can't remember if it's the skin or the seeds, because I ate the whole tomato, but so don't quote me on this. I'm obviously not a food expert, but it's either the skin or the seeds that are more inflaming and carry more of the toxins. Right. And so one of the advices was like, so I can't remember which it is, but whether it's skin or seeds, remove that and then eat the rest of the tomato, because you're lowering the toxic load and you're keeping the higher nutrient density. Right. And then my mom would say, well, that's really interesting, because my grandma, who was Italian and grew tomatoes in her backyard, would always take the skins off or take the seeds out, whichever one it was. Not because she saw read the Terry Walls book, but just because for hundreds of years, that's how they've been making tomato sauce. And then you find out that like, oh, if you soak grains before
Sure.
you bake with them or eat them, what happens is a lot of the toxins are leached out of the grains, and you're left with a higher nutrient density grain, and you're going to be less damaging on your body. And so that's like, oh, the new science figured that out. So now we can, but then you read like the Bible, and it's
Yeah.
like talking about soaking your grains before you're eating them.
It's
And why
amazing.
is that? Well, maybe because 500 or 1,000 years ago, people had less social media distractions and they could feel what not soaked grains did to their body.
Yeah.
And so they realized soaking them is a good idea. Right. And so it's like the lack of presence with our body is what creates a lot of the problems as well, because we can't even just figure out how to eat foods that make us feel good. So yeah, I would agree with you that like even more important than like what the quote unquote diet is being present with what the foods that eat do to us. And no, in order to build that up too, you know, you can do extreme things like go to a very bland diet, like just pears and pork or something like that for like 2 weeks, and then just start building yourself, adding things in.
Yeah.
You know, and you start with this, they call it an exclusion diet, and then you slowly add things in and see what it does to you. It's not easy, but sometimes when you're really suffering with an autoimmune condition, that can be the motivation to have you do something extreme. That's how my mom, you know, she was like at a loss. It's like, so I also just want to say this for people that are maybe like, you know, really struggling with the disease. Like I think it's very easy and dangerous to go into like the alternative path and then like as an either or, and then you like say, fuck you to all modern medicine. Sorry for cursing, but that's how I roll. Okay. But I think that's dangerous too. Like I am so grateful for modern medicine. Like, you know, I have, you know, a number of nieces and nephews that are the you know, because of like IVF and the incredible things that they can do, you know, in the hospital to help a birth happen successfully. You know, my son had a horrible croup, which is like this cough where you're like, you can't really breathe. In the middle of the night, we drove him to the ER and they gave him a steroid and he could breathe. And I was like, thank God for modern medicine. Thank God for pharmaceuticals. Like in certain times, I'm just not in a hurry for that all the time for everything. And I definitely don't believe it's the only solution. So I'm into both. Right.
Yeah.
You know, so I'll take an ibuprofen now and then because like something really hurts and it's really going to help, but I'm not going to take it all the time because it's going to destroy my gut lining and it's going to lead to more, you know, autoimmune and chronic conditions. And so it's both.
Yeah. Love that. I totally agree. Couldn't agree more. There's definitely a place for medicine, but to just question it, I think is so, and it brings the power back to us, right? Rather than giving our power away to the doctors or whoever.
Yeah.
I kind of want to, I'm conscious of the time and I would love to ask you, because obviously we've talked a lot around the food stuff, which is of huge interest to me. It was a business that I had for 10 years that was all around food because my daughter has celiac disease. So it's really fascinating to, you know, all of what you've talked about has, you know, really, goes along with everything that I've kind of found out for myself. And I guess latterly, what I've been really fascinated in is the role that the mind has to play in all of that as well, in the health of the body. And I'm curious to know, like, what do you see there as well? Because there's no such thing as a mind and a body, right? It's one whole thing. There's no separation. So could you speak?
Well, I think my fear of having another symptom for multiple sclerosis created another symptom for multiple sclerosis back in the eye. So that was like the mind at work, not in my favor. And I think also that like deciding that I'm going to be healthy and whole and I live an optimal diet, and I declare to myself, I have the body of a God. That's one of the things that I speak every morning. And in service of that God, I eat a clean and nourishing diet. And these are ideas that I teach myself about myself that both create a body that functions as if it's healthy, and it has me make behavioral choices that have me do the things in my environment, exercise, and eat the things that feed me. Right. The thing is, if I believe that my body is sick, I'm going to eat crap. it's just how it is. Like we people don't want to admit it, but when they feel that their body is weak and incapable, they don't take care of it.
Yeah.
Because you feel shit about yourself, and then you make shitty choices. Nobody likes to acknowledge that, like to pretend. I mean, and I say nobody, including myself, we like to pretend that, oh, if my body's in rough shape, then I'm treating it well. No, but often we get down on ourselves. So it's not like you're delusional and you think, oh, I'm not sick, I'm fine. No, it's like, I'm going to meet this whatever struggle that my body is having with an attitude of healing. The same way, if somebody's feeling, if somebody's like, oh, I'm so ugly, it's like, no, you're beautiful. And it's both like your personal opinion, but also, that this is a different perspective that will lift you, and I love you. And so I'm giving you this perspective. And we can see it sometimes more easily with somebody outside of ourselves. But, my whole life's work is about the conversation we have with ourselves and our relationship with ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's a huge part of our healing. My wife is an awesome example of this too. She was told she might not ever have kids when she was in her early 30s because she had polycystic ovaries. One was very bad, and the other one just so. And then when she got pregnant the first time and went to see the doctor for the scan, she had mentioned the polycystic ovaries. She said, neither of your ovaries have any polycystic, like, I don't know, whatever you say on it. He's like, so if you did have it, you don't anymore.
Wow.
And, and so just like, she was also very healthy eating, does a lot of meditation, positive mindedness. She's she's a big student of Joe Dispenza's work. I don't know if you've heard of him. But so healing the body through the mind is something that both of us are, very much believe in. And it's just kind of part of our life. So thanks for pointing it out, because sometimes when something's so close, you kind of forget about it. But it's, even if we get sick, quote unquote, like, we're very conscious about like just not getting wrapped up in a story that this is going to be horrible.
Right.
It's like our body's healing, we need this. Like right now, post-pandemic, we've had more illness than we did for the 2 years, and it's like, thank goodness our body's getting all the updates that it needed. It's like you don't plug in, get an iPhone online for 2 years and you turn it on, it's going to have lots of downloads, right? And so this is like, that's what's happening right now. And it's like, so grateful that we're getting stronger through these things. And, not to say that we're on it all the time, but that's the overarching attitude and approach. Because we, I mean, what's that guy's name? Bruce Lipton. Have you know his books? Yeah. I forget the name of his book, but it's about that idea that like he, in his book, he talks about like the literal connection between the way that we think and what it does to our, how our synapses fire and the brain chemicals that creates and the impact that has on the actual functioning of our cells in our body. I mean, it's not that difficult to make it's not like it has to be some mystical, magical thing that has no groundedness in reality. I mean, it's right there, right? The way that you think determines how much cortisol is released in your system, which is directly, impacting how much inflammation you have, and so it's like, and that's, that's part of the disease system. And so, there's loads of very, very, what's the word? Just like physical, natural, normal, everyday, like current physics explains it. You don't have to go out into like quantum realm. And I do believe that there are things outside of our understanding that are part of the impact too. Hence why, praying for another person can help them to heal. That's like, they've measured that impact as well. So, it's working on all sorts of levels. Yeah. And that's why I said at the beginning, I'm glad you brought up the self-creation thing, because I believe that part of what's had me not have multiple sclerosis anymore, and maybe never, is the idea that I don't have it and maybe never did.
Right.
So I can create a different past.
Yeah.
Like if I never had MS, that's actually means I'm more likely to never have it in the future. Like, because I'm just creating that forward, like, oh yes, my mom and her brother have it, but like I got my dad's genes. Like, why not live that story? And I didn't, I'm not going to get it.
Yeah. That's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, that's a whole nother podcast, I think, of like actually, creating a different story. And I know that is like your kind of work is all about that, which is amazing. And I guess on that, maybe it's an opportunity for you to tell people a little bit about how you work, and how people can find out more about you and how they can engage with you if they would like to understand more about self-creation. And
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for asking. The essence of the work that we do, and I say we have got a small team now. I have a company at wearecreating.com. We have coaching and training programs that are really about helping a person to change the way they talk to themselves. Our self-dialogue is what creates our way of thinking about who we are and thinking about the world. Like all of our subconscious thoughts follow from the conscious conversations we've had with ourselves and with others. So becoming conscious of the way that you talk about yourself, you can start to see how you create your world, your experience, which you call your way of being, which is where all your behaviors and actions come from, which create all your results in your life. And like I was saying earlier, when you believe that you're sick, and then you be that you're sick, and you make choices of a person who feels bad about themselves as sick, and you eat stuff that's not good for you, that's an example of an action that expressed by way of being, I'm sick. That's not advantageous, because that action of eating the crap food creates a result of an environment in you that is more inflaming, right? And so it's the same thing with, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs as well. It's like your idea that I'm broke and I don't have any money creates a certain level of scarcity that has you either procrastinate on the actions that would be productive and generate income, or it has you be in those actions in a way that's needy and attached and has people not want to buy from you, right? And so, which then leads to the result of not making money. And so it just exacerbates the issue.
Yeah.
And so we go to the heart of the matter, which is the way that you talk to yourself, and it creates your way of being. So have you feel healthy and whole and abundant and full. You could call it confidence, but it's so much more than that. It's deeper than that. Then it has you be in the world in ways that are more effective, more productive. And then you end up with more of what you want, whether it's in a relationship, or with your health and vitality, or with your income. And so it's really deep spiritual, philosophical training that help you to have that new and higher level conversation with yourself. And we do that through helping you with in the way that you speak with others, because the way that we talk to ourselves is an echo of the way that we talk to everybody else. And so through dialogue with us and learning how to have dialogue with other people, we have a lot of coaches that come through our work too, because it's, it enhances your ability to coach as well. You end up talking to yourself in a way that's kinder, more loving, and more empowering. And then you become more loved and more empowered by that conversation, which makes you more able to have an impact in the world and to create what you would love. So we help everybody create everything they want. It's pretty fun, because you never know what we're going to be talking about. We work with artists and musicians and actors and business owners and moms and dads. And so every day we're kind of creating different things with people, but we're doing the same thing every day, which is really helping them to see how they create their world through the way that they think about themselves and the world.
Yeah. And I guess my interpretation or understanding of that, because I know that you worked with Steve Hardison, is kind of it's not, it's kind of a connecting back to the truth of who we are, right? So I guess some people might hear what you said as, I don't know, like creating affirmations or attempting to change beliefs that are already there. But my understanding is that it's a lot deeper than that. It's about seeing all of that, all of those, I like to call it the sort of acquired program almost, that we're almost given, like a way of being through beliefs that we've acquired through conditioning. And there's a way of kind of uncovering that, seeing it for what it is, and realizing what's actually true, which isn't that.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's it's not a building up, it's a releasing and a realizing. I say to people sometimes, like, do you fear robbing a bank? And they're like, not really. And it's like, that's because there's nothing in you that's true that says, do you want to rob a bank? So you don't feel fear about things that aren't there already. And so the things that are in the way, that you are afraid of, are there because there's something beneath it that's true for you. Right. And so we use all of these existing ideas and stories. It's not just get them out of the way and like, that's it. Like, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because there's something that's deeper and truer behind that. And so it's a process of figuring out what are all these stories about ourselves that that we've got that are limiting us. And my suggestion is that's there because there's something true behind that that you're afraid of. And so once we kind of liberate you from that, let's keep looking in that domain, in that context, for what the true thing is. That's your essence. And then let's bring that forward through speaking, through meditation, through journaling, keep it present in your life in some way. And then you'll start to be in the habit of expressing that truth instead of the counter truth or some obstacle. Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love your work. I think what you're doing
Thank you so much.
Just completely life-changing, obviously. And I would encourage anyone to, go and look at your website. I'll put all the details obviously in the show notes. Sign up for your newsletter, which is brilliant. I love just having the regular kind of, reminders, I guess.
Awesome.
What's true. Is there anything else that you want to tell people about how to get in touch or?
Well, most people listening to your podcast are for like health and well-being. Is that right? Like, yeah. I think the other thing that I would love to say is there's a big difference between pain and suffering, and that, not everybody's dealt the same hand. And yes, there's a huge possibility that the physical difference in your body can improve dramatically. And I would love you to stay open and committed to that possibility. But I also would love to offer that a lot of the freedom is in a shift in relationship to what is occurring now. I didn't talk about like the spinal injury that I had, but it was a 10 out of 10 pain. And what that whole experience really gave me is the distinction between suffering and pain. And learning to, you can be free and you can be in love with an experience that, maybe at first it's only suffering. And so there's a lot of freedom, availability, and peace available right now through a shift in the mind, the way that you relate to what's going on in your body. And then that has a positive effect too on the physical body, but I don't know if that is a sexy enough like thing to get people excited about, but man, to imagine it, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that like being at peace with pain is really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I just would love to hang that carrot or blink that sign for people, because I think that's there's more immediate, a lot of the relief comes from that. Yes. And it can be quick. So
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, brought that up, because there may be people here who are like, well, I've got MS and it's not going anywhere, and it's like this is happening and that's happening, but there is a different experience available.
Yeah, and even in that little parody of what you just said there, like the way that you said it is you were kind of consciously emulating is a way of being that is resistance. Yeah. Right? Well, I've got MS, there's nothing I can do about it. And that right there, that is the suffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I would say, like my invitation is, this will be a challenging invitation, but a practical tool for the person that's feeling that and saying it that way, is I've got MS and there's nothing I can do about it. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's the invitation. Like meditate on that possibility, because that's where the peace lives.
Thank you so much, JP.
You're so welcome, Vicki. Thank you.
Amazing conversation. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.